Welcome to a special edition of 7 News. We have the latest on this coronavirus crisis. Here's what's coming up. Cruise death. Another Australian has died from the virus after leaving an ocean liner in Sydney. A Sydney nurse has tested positive to COVID-19 after working as a midwife. Breaking news out of the UK. Prince Charles confirmed to have the virus. We're live with his condition. And we count down to strict new coronavirus restrictions here at home. See what Sydney will look like in the morning.
This is 7 News with Mark Ferguson.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news. A 69-year-old Queensland man has died from coronavirus after getting off a cruise ship here in Sydney. Isabel Mullen is in our Brisbane newsroom for us. Isabel, he's the 9th person to die from the virus in Australia.
Good evening, Mark. Sadly, Gary Kirstenfield is Australia's 9th person to pass away and Queensland's 2nd. He died in isolation in Toowoomba Hospital earlier this afternoon. Tonight, Queensland Health released a statement saying he had a serious underlying medical condition before he contracted that virus, which is believed to have been on board a Royal Caribbean cruise ship which docked in Sydney last week. His family remains in isolation, Mark.
Thank you, Isabel. Our thoughts are with his family. A midwife at St George Hospital in Sydney South has now tested positive. New South Wales Health is frantically working to track down patients who may have come into contact with her. It's believed the midwife worked at the hospital while infectious over the past fortnight. Authorities are assuring concerned parents that the virus is low risk to newborns. Now in breaking news, Prince Charles has tested positive to coronavirus. Sarah Greenouch joins me live from London. Sarah, this has only just been confirmed. What more can you tell us?
Mark, this has only broken in about the past 15 minutes or so. Clarence House has released a statement. I will read some of it to you. It says the Prince of Wales has tested positive for coronavirus. He has been displaying mild symptoms, but otherwise remains in good health and has been working from home throughout the past few days. It goes on to say that his wife, Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, she has been tested, but those tests have been returned and she does not have the virus. They are now both self-isolating in accordance with the advice here at their private estate in Scotland. It goes on to say it is not possible to ascertain from whom the Prince caught the virus owing to the high number of engagements he carried out in his public role during recent weeks. So we understand that he was started showing symptoms on Sunday. He was tested for COVID-19 on Monday and those results were returned last night here in the UK Tuesday, and it's now Wednesday morning and they have just broken this news to us. He is aged 71 and we understand that the last public engagement he did was actually an Australian bushfire fundraiser at Mansion House on the 12th of March.
Sarah, few people shake more hands than Prince Charles. Is there any confirmation or any news if he's had any close contact with the Queen in recent days?
Well, Mark, we're hearing that the last time he saw the Queen was the morning of that bushfire fundraiser. So on the morning of the 12th of March, she is obviously aged 93, so certainly in that very high-risk category, as is Prince Philip, who we know has been very unwell in recent months. He was in hospital for several days just before Christmas. We are told that they are taking all the precautions, following the advice, but no doubt a lot more to come on this throughout the day here in the UK. So we'll have the latest in the morning on Sunrise. Mark?
Yeah, we'll hear plenty more on this one. Sarah, thanks for your time. Now, we're just under 2 hours away from tough new restrictions coming into force across Australia to slow the spread of coronavirus. Miley Hogan is in Leichhardt for us this evening. Miley, plenty of changes. What can we expect to wake up to tomorrow?
Well, Mark, life has already changed so much for all of us, and by midnight tonight further restrictions will come into place, and it means that by the morning a lot of people will wake up and they won't be coming to work and a lot of businesses will not open. Some of those here in this arcade in Leichhardt. We're talking about beauty salons, waxing, tanning, nails. Hair appointments will be restricted to 30 minutes. Food courts are closed. Real estate auctions, open homes, they are off. Libraries, galleries, swimming pools are all shut. Food outlets are open, but for takeaway only, and for now shopping centres are open. When it comes to our social lives, drastic changes there too. Birthday parties, house parties, dinner parties, well, they are no longer an option. And the big one that people will really struggle with, weddings are now limited to 5 people and funerals just 10. These are the stage 2 restrictions that the Prime Minister says are necessary to save people's lives and livelihoods in the long run.
in many cases in relation to the operation of businesses, some very difficult changes, which means that they will need to close their doors, and that also means that their staff will no longer be able to turn up to work and have employment.
And Miley, these are no longer just warnings or requests. Those who breach new coronavirus rules could now be fined on the spot.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. This is from authorities who are fed up with people who are not following the social distancing and the self-isolation rules. It will now be a $1,000 on-the-spot fine for an individual and $5,000 for businesses. And authorities are warning that can go up drastically to $11,000 for a major breach and 6 months in prison. We heard from the police commissioner today. He said if there's a house party with 100 people at it, then police will hand out 100 fines. They're also talking about introducing apps on phones to track people who are in self-isolation and make sure they are sticking to those measures.
We don't rule out any further developments when it comes to the enforcement of these regulations. Everything is on the table. But overnight, when we saw nearly 25% more victims of this virus, it's quite clear that we have to act in the best interests of the majority of people who want to do the right thing.
Now, police will be giving verbal warnings. They want to talk to people and make sure that they understand these new restrictions because it is a major change to the way we live, Mark.
Miley Hogan, a very quiet Leichhardt for us. Thank you. Now, the economic crisis is changing so rapidly, affecting millions of Australians in recent days. But we can reveal more help is on the way. Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton has the details. Gemma, what can we expect to see and when will we see it?
Well, we're expecting to hear of more assistance being offered as early as tomorrow. We understand there's discussion tonight of various options on the table, including a moratorium on evictions from all public and private rentals for all tenants who are currently up to date with their payments. We understand that states and territories are also urging a freeze on rent increases, and we hear there is discussion of a potential moratorium on utility bills, capping costs to households in distress, alongside a freeze on price increases.
Will be very welcome, Gemma. Thank you. Australia's jobless crisis just got a whole lot worse, with almost 1,400 Rivers, Katie's and Noni B clothing stores to close tomorrow. Some 7,000 workers will be stood down, most bound for welfare queues, where the fear of going broke is boiling over into anger at the long delays.
This single mum has lost her business and her patients, forced to queue again after the MyGov website failed again.
I've tried to get online, couldn't get through, so my only option is to line up here.
At first it was bartenders and kitchen staff. The shutdown has quickly claimed workers in every profession, from lifeguards
in Western Sydney, local pools,
to taxi drivers.
It was bad before the virus and now it's very bad. There's nothing out there.
Today 7,000 staff from Rivers, Katie's and Noni B were given their marching orders.
Those queues represent families who are doing it tough.
Centrelink today introduced a new function online, telling people to go to the MyGov website and click on Intention to Claim. You should receive a phone call within 2 days. Payments will be backdated from Monday.
And already we've had over 200,000 registrations.
Despite the reassurances, real people are finding it virtually frustrating. You tried getting online?
Yes, I have. Midnight, 3 a.m, 9 a.m.
Whether you make it to the front of the queue, register online or by phone, the whole point of this is to provide a livable wage to replace the wages suddenly snatched away. But a lot of people we've spoken to today say they're being told it could take up to 6 weeks before the money hits their accounts, and they've got bills to pay right now.
We just urge this government to do everything it can to get these big cash payments to people in their hands.
With predictions of 2 million out of work, the government will need some new lines for those lining up.
The economy's going to go bust. I'm unemployed. They're all unemployed. What are we going to do?
One small ray of hope, Domino's Pizza today calling for 2,000 delivery drivers as demand for takeaway takes off. Brian Seymour, 7 News.
There was a rush today on the city's beauty salons, tattoo parlours, even tanning salons, as many scrambled to get in one final treatment. In less than 2 hours, they'll close, and for many more workers, it means a very uncertain year ahead.
Another day and another set of bans bring more businesses to their knees. At Bondi this morning, gyms moved classes outside, equipment sterilised, classes limited to 10.
We just keep our social distancing, as you can see, 1 metre, 2 metres, metre and a half apart.
Some pools have already closed. But from midnight tonight, everyone in the country will have to follow suit.
Last swim, it's really sad. I come here every day.
A bit of a shame that we have to close it when it's an open air pool. Really, how are you going to get sick here?
On the northern beaches, the library at Warringah Mall is closed. The food court at Bondi Junction already stacking away chairs. Paddy's Market is shut, but food markets are still keen for your business.
Farmers and small businesses who really rely on this market, so we hope that they will let us continue.
The biggest impact will be in the beauty industry. At salons today, a rush to get in one final appointment.
Pretty intense, and it's pretty emotional because obviously I have staff and you set up a business and it becomes part of your family.
At this Parramatta tattoo parlour, something permanent before the temporary shutdown.
Well, I don't want to go 6 months without getting a tattoo.
Hairdressers can continue, like here in Bankstown, as long as appointments are under half an hour.
I reckon these next few days they're going to close us down.
When venues like this close at midnight tonight, the hardest part for operators is not knowing how long it will be before they can open their doors again. And that means so many more people across the whole country are now out of work.
Is it going to be 4 weeks or is it going to be 6 months, and then to be out of work? And it's quite emotional.
And it's only just begun. Andrew Denny, 7 News.
Some welcome news now for many families. Supermarkets and pharmacies across the state have been given the green light to open around the clock. It will mean 24/7 access to food and medical supplies for the near future. Turning back the boats, it's a phrase we've heard a lot from the federal government, but today it was laying the blame over the one that got through. Border Force bosses say New South Wales Health was responsible for biosecurity when the Ruby Princess brought COVID-19 right into the heart of Sydney and then beyond.
As the broadsides fly over the Ruby Princess scandal,
the decision to allow them off was one for New South Wales Health.
There is no action that New South Wales Health could have taken to stop those cases.
Out at sea, it's clear where the captain's finger is pointed.
In conference with the ABF, or the Australian Border Force, today, we have the confirmation that none of our guests will be required to self-isolate or anything of that sort. We have a full, clean bill of health, so to speak.
Tonight, audio from the bridge of the Ovation of the Seas suggesting Border Force officials told the crew,
whether you are international or going back home in Australia, you will walk off and go home at your leisure.
That announcement coming 24 hours after this one.
All people coming to Australia will be required, I stress, to self-isolate.
The cruise ship's operator says it never made it to NZ, so after returning to Sydney, nearly 4,000 passengers were herded off, told by crew,
"This is 100% sure and you can go to the medical centre and speak with the doctor. It's not any cases at all."
But there were, so far, 13 cases of COVID-19 confirmed from the Ovation of the Seas, another 7 from the Voyager of the Seas, and 131 from the Ruby Princess, but nobody's wearing the blame.
Every single agency needs to take responsibility on our borders.
Evan Batten, 7 News.
Queensland will close its border in a matter of hours, sealing the state off from the rest of the country. Mac Lyon is on the New South Wales border at Tweed Heads. Mac, good evening. What will happen there from midnight?
Good evening, Mark. Well, it will go down as the night Queensland closed to the country, and in the last few hours, we've seen a lot of people coming down to this monument right on the border to get one last photo before it all comes into effect at 12:01 tonight. Queensland essentially shutting its borders to overseas and interstate travellers. That means anybody from New South Wales who wants to travel into Queensland has to get checked at the border. They will, if they are allowed in, then go into quarantine for 14 days or be turned around and sent straight back home. Now, the hardest part of this whole effort is to really control one of the biggest borders in the country. Here in the Gold Coast alone on the border, we have 14 streets that intersect. Most of those will have to be closed. Only a few will be open to the public, and they will all be manned by police. Now, police say they will be checking every vehicle from 12:01 to make sure only people who need to be in Queensland can come in. There will, of course, be exemptions for health and emergency service workers and also for supply trucks with food. And, of course, anybody living right on this border who works on one side and studies on one side and lives on the other, they will be exempt as well.
OK, Mac Lyon at Tweed Heads for us. Thank you very much. And in less than an hour, New Zealand will enter an unprecedented lockdown. All non-essential businesses will be closed, all schools shut, and everyone will have to stay at home. The only exceptions will be those exercising alone or taking their dog for a walk, as well as people visiting essential services. Supermarkets will stay open throughout the 4-week lockdown, and they'll continue to be restocked. The nation's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has asked citizens to act like they already have COVID-19. Still to come in 7 News, social distancing. What is it and why is it so important? A Sydney distillery doing its bit to fight the virus. And in sport, Tokyo 2020, now Tokyo 2021. We'll have all the latest on the decision to postpone the Olympics. You're watching a special late edition of 7 News. This was the international check-in desk at Sydney Airport this morning, usually full of travellers. Today, all but deserted as we shut our borders. A standoff is unfolding off the coast of WA tonight with 3 ships barred from docking at Fremantle. El Giorgio is there for us. El, a very uncertain situation is unfolding behind you.
Mark, good evening. It is a pretty unbelievable situation that we are seeing unfolding in waters off WA right now. There are more than 1,300 crew and passengers, in fact, aboard the Antanya cruise ship. Today we saw a bunch of WA healthcare workers go onto the ship after about 25 people said that they were having breathing difficulties. That also came after one passenger tested positive for COVID-19. Yesterday, the Magnifica cruise ship left Perth and then it went to Dubai. It was rejected there, so we actually understand it's on its way back to Perth now. On Friday, the Vasco da Gama cruise ship will be arriving. So as you say, 3 cruise ships all on their way to Perth, more than 4,500 passengers and crew aboard. No doubt a very hefty burden on our healthcare system if all those people were to get off.
Well, what happens, El? What about the passenger on board? What's going to happen with them?
The passengers and crew aboard this ship, they are not allowed to get off. Our Premier is very firm on that. He doesn't want to see a repeat of what you saw in Sydney aboard the Ruby Princess last week. Unless this ship leaves, it's not going anywhere. It has to stay anchored between Perth and Rottnest. But passengers who will be arriving in Perth on Friday aboard the Vasco da Gama, there are actually more than 900 Australian and New Zealanders coming off that ship. They will then be taken to Rottnest Island. That's one of our most popular tourist attractions here in WA. All the tourists have gone, though. It's now being it's now a quarantine zone, and that's where they will stay for 14 days, where they'll be quarantined. Mark? OK, El Giorgio, in tough conditions off WA. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Social distancing is now a crucial term central to the fight against this virus, not just here in Australia but right around the world. So what does it really mean and how can it stop the COVID-19 spread? 7's Melissa Doyle explains.
In March 2003, the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. A deadly new virus had appeared in southern China and was quickly spreading. Nearby nations imposed strict quarantine measures, stopping it in its tracks. The virus was SARS, and health authorities breathed a sigh of relief. They had managed to avoid a global catastrophe. So how did we manage to defeat SARS but seem to be losing the fight against COVID-19? The difference is in how the viruses behave. Once infected, people with SARS were rarely contagious until after they showed symptoms. COVID-19 is very different. Once infected, you are contagious almost immediately, meaning you can feel fine but end up infecting 2 to 3 people. Those people you infected each go on to infect 2 to 3 others, and that is how the virus spreads. Here is where social distancing comes in. Imagine this person didn't go out for lunch. These ones worked from home. and this person didn't visit their mum. By staying at home, the total number of cases is dramatically reduced, and so is the pressure on our doctors and nurses. The ones left can be treated and hopefully saved. And this is why, when faced with a global pandemic, social distancing can make the difference between life and death. So the advice from doctors: assume you have it, and that will help you keep your distance.
To sport now, and the Tokyo Olympics have been postponed until next year, leaving a host of Aussie athletes with uncertain futures. A phone call earlier today from the most senior power broker in the Olympic movement and Japan's Prime Minister sealed the decision. It comes days after a number of countries, including Australia, told the International Olympic Committee a Games in 2020 was no longer possible. The Olympic dream for some of our athletes, including our hockey-roos, is now up in the air, but that's of little concern to goalkeeper Rachel Lynch, who works as a registered nurse.
To say that it's devastating the Olympics is postponed, like it's ridiculous. It's devastating to see that, 500 people died last night in Spain.
It's official, Tokyo 2020 will now be Tokyo 2021. NRL players may have to take pay cuts to help keep their clubs afloat. The Code has begun talks with the Players Association, with the season suspended and leagues clubs forced to close their doors.
It's the same result for everybody. It's catastrophic, and we've got to be able to work through it. We mightn't have junior football next year. We mightn't have Flegg. We mightn't have Canterbury Cup. We've got to look at all those things now.
Most staff have been told to take annual leave, with players given individual kits to take home so they can continue to train. One of the last sports still standing in Australia, horse racing, is dealing with a potential disaster tonight. The meeting at Sandown in Victoria was abandoned today, and racing in that state has been suspended until at least Friday, while an industry participant is tested for COVID-19. Stakes Day here at Rose Hill on Saturday is still going ahead at this stage under strict new biosecurity measures. They include the number of jockeys being limited to an elite group of 25 with no interstate riders.
This time of year, the big money races, you want to be there. Now I can't, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I'm not the only person in that boat. You've got your Craig Williams, your Mark Zaras, your Damien Olivers.
Racing New South Wales says the final call on whether racing continues will be made by government experts. Stakes Day is live on 7 on Saturday. An unlikely ally has joined the fight against coronavirus by supplying hospitals across Sydney with much-needed hand sanitizer. The pandemic and resulting panic buying frenzy has resulted in a shortage, so doctors have turned to distilleries to increase supply.
From making gin to supplying our frontline health services, Poor Tom's, a distillery at Marrickville in Sydney's inner west, has become an unlikely ally in the fight against COVID-19.
We'd rather be making gin, but we were approached by a neighbour who's a chest physician out of Prince of Wales Hospital, who asked us just initially to supply his clinic.
But the demand is for a very different kind of alcohol.
We've since sort of switched almost all of our resources over to making hand sanitizer.
An essential product which has become a rare commodity due to the coronavirus pandemic.
We've got a community of doctors that are ordering directly through our sales channel, like we used to sell gin.
And they can hardly make it quickly enough. 2,000 litres of the World Health Organisation approved product has already been supplied to Sydney hospitals.
For us, the priority is supporting the community that's supporting the rest of Australia. We're selling it at just above cost, enough to keep our bar staff and our full-time staff in business and turning up for work and having a sense of purpose.
Something increasingly important as we see more and more Australians out of work. Christian Gaupset, 7 News.
Yeah, great idea. Still to come in 7 News, David Brown with tomorrow's weather. Welcome back. It's time now to check on our weather with David Brown. How's Thursday looking, Brownie?
Thanks, Fergo. A mix of showers and local thunderstorms are moving through this evening. A few more showers are in the wind tomorrow. Now, from our weather eye in the sky, a warning for severe thunderstorm activity covers a vast region to our north. The trough behind the showers and storms is gradually contracting towards the northeast corner of our state. But having said that, as we look at the forecast model for tomorrow, you'll notice showers just lingering along the remainder of the coast and the adjoining slopes. If you are travelling around the nation tomorrow, well, warm, sunny conditions are expected in Brisbane, around 28 degrees. Melbourne, fine and mild, around 21. For Adelaide, clear skies, 24 degrees. The heat continues in WA. Check out Perth. 37 degrees. Back home, we're looking at a mixture of, well, scattered showers and storms, mainly to the north. Severe storm activities likely over the northern tablelands during the afternoon. West of the Great Dividing Range, it'll be fine and sunny and somewhat cooler than today. And of course, the same can be said for our metro area. Just some showers rolling through. Most of the showers should clear later in the day. For the city, keep the brolly handy. Our forecast top is 23 degrees, coming off a low of around 17. Let's go to the outlook now. Friday, just the odd shower or two. In fact, I think it'll be fine for most of the day. A similar pattern is expected to unfold across the weekend. Some storms are likely, well, during the early part of next week. So that's the latest weather. Fergo.
Good on you, Brownie. Thank you. Finally, 1 in 3 Australians are expected to try their luck in tomorrow night's $80 million Powerball. The coronavirus crisis has failed to put a dampener on ticket sales, with most retail outlets remaining open across the country. However, people are urged not to rush to newsagents, as there will be strict social distancing rules. That is 7 News for now. Sunrise will be back with the very latest from 5:30 in the morning. I'm Mark Ferguson. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night.